And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harris Reno, alongside my co-host, Dan Kiley. Episode 127 of the Talk. Second episode following a loss with Dan and I both here. I can't say that this loss is like any other loss, though. Last year's loss, I think we took a few days off before we did our podcast episode. And as Dan noted, not long after that, we didn't have a show for a few months. I can't say that's going to happen again because it's not anytime soon. But we are here even after a loss. Dan, but before we get into that, we have a loaded edition, a loaded review. I don't know how much of the Auburn game we will talk. We will talk about it, I guess, at the very end because I think a lot of the show is going to be dedicated to Alabama. But I know, because there's a lot to cover and a lot of ground to get to. But first, hot topic number one. Dan, obviously with the passing of the baseball legend, Cincinnati Red legend, Pete Rose, hot topic, real life, current world, outside world, and here on the Talk podcast is, should it be in the Hall of Fame?
Ben should have been in the Hall of Fame. Ben should have been. I mean, you've had so many different guys bet on. You've had the sports themselves make so much money off of. It was never proven that he bet against his team. I would have a real. And listen, I know I'm in the minority on this. I have just been absolutely blasted. I've had people say the ugliest things on earth to me about my stance on this, but I just think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, like what he was able to accomplish has nothing to do with what he did. His records deserve to be in there. He should be the all-time hit king, all of that stuff. So yes, 100%. Yes, I believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. He should have been in there before he died. I think the cruelty of this thing is they're going to put him in the Hall of Fame. They were just waiting for him to die because they didn't want him to have the satisfaction, which is a pretty shitty thing, to be completely honest. And it was it goes into a much bigger story or a much bigger conversation for another day, and probably a Dan's rant all to itself whenever it's off season, about just my feeling about the baseball writers in general and the way they vote like little bitches. I'll just say it that way.
I'm with you here. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. And honestly, the only part of me that says and it's not even that he shouldn't be. It's more so like, man, it really sucks. Is I'm not a fan of the posthumous. I think that's how you say it. Conversation in terms of inducting him after he's passed. I know, obviously, there are people that you just can't prevent that. It's just life. It happens. But I mean, especially in his case, he's been alive. He was around for so long. It's like, man, why, if you're going to put him in anyways, why not go ahead and do it while he's still here? So I think that, like Dan said, is a very, I guess, tragic, makes the situation all the worse long term here in regards to Pete Rose. Prayers and condolences to him and his family and friends, all involved in that. Baseball legend, no doubt. I wasn't alive when he played. Never got to see him live, but I mean, you go look at his highlights. You go look at his, stat sheet, resume, whatever you want to call it. It's filled.
And we've had an absolute run of deaths here lately of like really famous people. You had James Earl Jones, Darth Vader himself, Dikembe Mutombo, Pete Rose on the same day. You had John Amos, who, if you've ever watched Coming to America, there's a bunch of other ones like you would recognize him. He's one of that guys where you just recognize his face. And then the guy who played Taggart in Beverly Hills Cop, famous actor. There's just been a run of them, just a bunch of people dying. So that's crazy.
Prayers and condolences to all those people. Dikembe Mutombo. That was one I didn't expect.
No.
And not that you expect any of them, but it's like, man.
He was healthy.
Yeah, gone way too soon.
Pete Rose, you can kind of see it coming. He hasn't been doing good health-wise. But Dikembe Mutombo, like, as far as I knew,
out of nowhere. Dan, hot topic number 2. I don't know if I worded this correctly. So if I did, you feel free to go ahead and reword it into how you intended it. What Georgia loss, and it may not even be Georgia, has made you the most upset or the maddest?
Yeah,
I worded that wrong in my memory.
So Yeah, it's not necessarily Mattis. Is which one hurt you the most at the time that it happened? Like, just absolutely ripped your soul out. And I think a lot of people would say the overtime game to Alabama, the national championship game, and that probably should be the answer. Probably. However, there is a game, and it's far less significant, so that's why it just doesn't make any sense. But it just absolutely gutted me and devastated me, and possibly because I was such a huge fan of Jacob Eason. Jacob Eason drops back 55 yards, hits Calvin Ridley, or not Calvin Ridley. That'd be something, wouldn't it? Riley Ridley, for a touchdown on the sideline to take the lead on Tennessee. That was a huge game. I remember watching it, jumping off the couch, screaming up and down. Very, very similar to exactly what happened this past Saturday, but we'll get into that in just a second. Only to turn around to have your heart ripped out. And, that was what I believe that was Kirby's first year as head coach, if I'm not mistaken. Was it not, or was it second year?
Correct. First.
Okay, first year. Yeah. Sure. But I don't know why that bothered me so much. I think it was just the swing of emotions, but the Jacob Eason hits a Hail Mary, and then Dobbs hits the Hail Mary going right back to Jennings. That it just stuck with. I mean, like, I still remember all the people who participated in that thing. That was bad, Harrison. And like I said, that probably shouldn't be the answer, but for some reason it is for me.
Well, you said my original answer, and that one hurts, and it's going to hurt for a long time. But obviously after
which one?
Georgia won the national title, 2017 national title. That one hurts. I think maybe the second most has to be SEC championship the following year. I mean, Georgia was up, I want to say 14 points or 17 points in that game. And when Tua went out with the ankle, you're just like,
oh,
they're cooked. Like, Bama's cooked. It's over. Georgia's going to win the SEC title, get a chance at the playoffs again. And what does Jalen Hurts do? The same guy who was benched a year earlier and was on the wrong side of that history comes in and beats you. And does it in a way where, I mean, you just, once they scored first, you're like, oh crap, here we go again. That one eats. That one eats. I think the SEC championship loss this past year probably eats a lot of people, especially if Georgia's winning the national title this year. It's like, man, they lost. They missed hugely on the chance to be the first team in the modern era to three-peat. That hasn't happened since the 1930s. Crazy to think about. So, but yeah, I'll stick with the back-to-back years. 2017 national championship, 2018 SEC championship. Those two hurt for a really long time. Now, I don't know. I don't know about you, Dan, but does the national title actually help you get over those? Or does moments like Saturday where, everything afterwards you've lost just make it all hurt the more?
I think it's just that I've taken away the power of Alabama to hurt me. I just think I have a realistic. Last year, SEC championship game, losing that game really hurt because we didn't have a chance to do anything about it. Right, it was just over. The finality of it all, and the fact that Georgia was absolutely cruising last year. They were beating the brakes off of everybody, and I think if you would have given Georgia Alabama's path through the playoffs, I think we would have walked right through. I 100%, and you can call me a homer if you want to. I just on what I saw, I fully believe Georgia would have beat Alabama, or Georgia would have beat Michigan last year easily, and then they would have absolutely boat raced Washington, CTCU.
Obviously the only game that I think the best game would have been that Texas game would have been really cool last year in the regular season. Part of me, I'm with you. There's other people. There's non-Georgia fans. There's non-Georgia experts. There's people in the national media. I think Joel Klatt said it. If Georgia was in last year, they probably would have won, is what he says. Which I guess makes it hurt a little bit more. It's like,
right.
It seems like a pretty consensus thought of, hey, if Georgia was in, they probably win the whole damn thing. So yeah, I'm with you there. But speaking of Alabama heartaches, let's talk about the most recent one. Now, this is something we've talked about. It's different. It's different from the rest. This one doesn't, at least from the reactions I've seen on social media, which, as Dan has so I guess poetically said on here before, social media is not always real. Twitter's not always real life.
Oh, it's not a real place.
Yeah, it's not a real place, but I will judge the reaction that I've seen on there when talking about this. This one's a little different because Georgia was down 28 points after the first quarter. And really after that, I think everybody's thought was, well, damn, for the next 3 quarters, Georgia's going to lose. Georgia's going to lose. All right. Dan, I just muted you, by the way, because we had some audio leaking through. Like, it just sat with you. It was similar in a way to the Ohio State game where you can't hear me? Hold on. What's up?
I said I'm good. I just had a quick problem, but we're good.
Okay. It was similar to the Ohio State game in that way. Of where you're sitting there thinking Georgia's going to lose, and somehow they make that miraculous comeback. The only difference, Georgia didn't pull out. Dan, where do you want to start with this one? I think I got a couple key points on the sheet. I didn't really fill it in all. Obviously, the defense is a big something that I didn't fill in there, but just off by memory, I can give you some takes on that.
Let me start with this right here. First of all, it's a tale of two halves. Okay, the sensation, the feeling, the opinion that I have are completely different on both halves. Like, I understand that you can formulate one opinion based on the entire game, but I don't choose on doing that. I have two completely different viewerships of that game, the way that I viewed the first half, the way that I viewed the second half. And then the other part is that it's Wednesday, almost fatigued of talking about this game because it was literally, I mean, at the end of it, I had tweeted, it was either immediately after Harrison or after. I know I tagged you in it, but I was like, I can only imagine how entertaining that game was to a neutral observer. We obviously don't have the benefit of that, of being a neutral observer. Both of us have a rooting interest. And then even Alabama fans. Now, Alabama fans, and listen, I'm not going to crap on Alabama fans because we have done it too. The knee-jerk reaction. It's the reaction that you get. It's like a defensive mechanism. That's what I'm trying to say. The defensive mechanism of whenever the other team comes storming back and takes the lead or whatever, is you don't want to give them credit. You want to diminish it by saying, oh, well, we kind of quit. We were coached or whatever. But to start off with, I want to address the very beginning of the game, and this is my opinion. Harrison may or may not share the opinion, but my opinion is that Alabama came out with their hair on fire. They were playing for something, and Georgia tried to come out with this professional attitude of we've been here before, and they did not meet Alabama's enthusiasm. Now, I've had a lot of coaches say along the way that all of that energy doesn't mean it or means nothing once you get hit in the mouth. Okay. I've heard that, or that, you've only got to withstand it for a couple. It's like, well, hell, Alabama rode that wave of emotion for a quarter and a half and they were on fire, and Georgia was just flat footed. And I think that led to a lot of the problems to start the football game. It's just Alabama had a much different energy level. They were out to prove something. They had a brand new coach in there. And, I believe they felt the disrespect of being an underdog for the first time at home since 2017. There was a lot going against Georgia to start the football game right there. And that, I think that led to a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about in the first half. So I don't want to get into my second half thoughts without you having a chance to respond to the first half. But in the first half, Harrison, I really felt like Alabama just had an energy that we failed to meet.
It's tough because I've been battling with it all week of like, what the heck happened? And I mean, really simply for me, I mean, it comes down to, I guess, really just maybe it is one thing. Maybe it is one thing. And I hate to say it because it's so damn cliche and it's not analysis. It's just you can watch it and anybody who watches the game can see it. One team executed, one team didn't. I mean, from the moment that potential 75, maybe not, what was it? Maybe 60 yards, 65 yard potential touchdown pass. It was a beautiful deep ball from Beck. One of his best throws of the night. It goes straight through the hands of Arian Smith. From that moment forward, you could just see maybe the energy, definitely the energy in the stadium, but the momentum just shifted massively to Alabama. And it was already on their side because they had gone down and scored pretty easily. As effective and as decisive as possible, they scored on their first drive. But from that moment forward, the game just further and further shifted away from Georgia and into Bama's favor. And that's what makes the explosive plays so important, because just as impactful as you hitting on one can be, for instance, Ryan Williams' 75-yard touchdown changed that game. Arian Smith later in the game, that 60-yard, whatever the reception was, maybe 40-yard reception, he got down to the one, can change the game. You dropping those, you missing on those, can change the game just as much, because it is a confidence killer out of the gate.
And in all fairness to everyone on earth, I know you said it. I know I said it. I know Jeremiah said it. I know Jonathan said it in our group chat. Dropping the very first play of the game that should have been, if not a touchdown, because you can't, like kind of like in baseball, you can't assume the double play, right? You can't assume the touchdown, but you can assume that was going to be a big ass play on the very first play of the game. And every one of us said, "Oh boy, that's not good." And within a play or two, all of us said that may have just changed the complexion of the game, right?
Yeah.
So that's not reactionary. That's not revisionist history. That's not us trying to be smart later. In the moment, and I can only assume that most Georgia fans felt the same way. Oh shit, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because like you said, you can't miss those. You may continue, sir.
No, you're good. I mean, that's the thing. We talk about explosives. Typically, when we talk about explosives, it's the ones that hit, but we don't talk enough about the ones that miss. I mean, just throwing it back. If Arian Smith drops that very same pass in the 2022 semifinal versus Ohio State, the comeback maybe never happens versus Ohio State.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, that is a confidence boost in all senses. And not only just because he scored, but if you drop it, it's like, man, we just can't have anything go to right for us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the one part of Carson Beck's performance. I'm not going to make excuses for him. He played his worst game into the first half that I've ever seen him play. Probably the worst performance from a Georgia quarterback in a long time. He joined Stetson Bennett as the second straight Georgia quarterback to have 3 turnovers on the road at Alabama. And those are 2 of the worst performances from a Georgia quarterback in a long time. The only one that maybe puts up competition for it is versus Florida in 2015. I'm blanking on his name. The guy who should have never started it. Yeah, Fatun Bada is the only, like, that company is not company you want to be in terms of performances. But yeah, Dan, I don't know if it's energy. You could I agree. The energy is different, but I don't know if it's always just, completely Bama has the edge, or Bama's just beating the crap out of Georgia for 15 minutes.
They just, I'm telling you, the
aura is different. The aura was different.
They walked on the field with an energy and FU attitude. And like you could see, it was buzzing. They were jumping, they were yelling, they were screaming, they were hyped. They were like, I mean, they were so excited to play that football game. And then if you looked on the other sideline, it was just now. Yeah, there's something to be said about being stoic and ready to go, but I don't know. It was weird. It was really, really weird, and the energy was just not good. And like you said, missing the early play, and I mean, we talked about it. At least I did ad nauseum in the lead-up show. Was that Carson Beck played his worst game of the year in the SEC championship last year, and he can't do that again against Alabama if you want to have success. And I'll be damned if he didn't go out there and just shit the bed in the first half. Oh my God, that was bad. And I mean, the ball play, well, okay, maybe the trajectory got derailed when Arian Smith didn't catch that ball, and then his confidence went into the crapper, right? Maybe and that
you have the OPI. That same drive. Yeah.
I mean, so maybe there were some things that contributed to it. It's just, man, we were just like, you can't do that again. And I'll be damned if he didn't. So at the end of it, Harrison, it was 28-0. I'm sitting on the couch. I am sulking like you wouldn't believe. My wife had left the room. She didn't want to watch the game anymore. Like, okay, so my wife doesn't watch sports, but she watches Georgia everything. So if there's Georgia something on and we're watching it, she's watching it. You know,
She's a true dog. She's a true dog.
She's got our Georgia stuff on. She's ready to go, and she's not a bandwagon fan. Her name is on the side of the stadium. Yours isn't. You know, she's all in. But that game got so bad that she was like, I got to go to bed. I'm going up into the room. And of course, my son stayed in the room because he's rooting for Alabama like a little jackass. And he's over here, roll tide, roll tide. Hey, Dad, you think that was a good throw? I could probably make that throw. I mean, it was bad. So it wasn't good. The first half
of this was silent in chat.
Listen, I'm telling you, the first half of that football game was as bad as it gets as a Georgia fan. And like, I was so defeated. Like, I felt like somebody just walked out in front of me and shot my dog and then just made me watch it bleed out. I mean, I was so miserable. Like, and then halftime happens. And of course, I didn't turn the game off because I'm a glutton for punishment, Harrison. So whether we're getting beat by 50 or getting beat by 15 seconds, I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to watch. So take us into the second half. We get the ball to start the half. We don't score first drive, right?
Then I think do you turn it over? Let me pull up the drive chart. Hold on. I know there's the fumble in there. I want to say the fumble comes. Yep. Fumble comes on your second drive. Third drive. They punt in the first drive of the second half. You force a Bama 3 and out. You go down and you score. You're like, okay, that's great. You're down 15. Yeah, 3 and out was huge. You get your touchdown. You go down 15. Then they get a field goal, and then you fumble. And boom. I don't know about anybody else, but any momentum that Georgia just got, gone with that fumble. Now, give the defense credit. You force another punt, and that's where the run begins. Dan, in terms of the second half, we talked about it on the show. You talked about it ad nauseum. You challenged him to bring it, and he brought it. And I want to give him credit because I do see the narrative here of this, this guy's part of the problem. Guys, Mike Bobo did everything you wanted him to do. He took shots down the field. He dialed up explosives. He did it in the first half, and he did it in the second half. The sole difference is those balls were caught. Those plays were made. That's the difference. The turnovers decreased. They went out the window. He did what you wanted. All right? So, if you don't mind, for the people out there that think Bobo should be gone or this game's on Bobo, I don't know how you watch that game and put it on a coordinator because he did the same exact thing in the second half that he did in the first half, and the difference simply was they started to execute. Carson Beck threw for 339 yards in the second half, completed 19 of his 33 throws. In the first half, he was 8 of 17. Go watch the game, whether it's the TV copy, whether it's the all 22. You can see it. The game plan didn't change. The execution did. So, please, let's spare that conversation for another week. Because this was, by all means, one of the best, at least in the second half alone, one of the best offensive showings Georgia's had versus Alabama in recent memory. You scored 33 points in the second half. That's one of the better. They scored 33 in the national title they won against them.
You and I had so many conversations about this particular topic. And I've never been the hugest Bobo fan. I always felt like in the biggest games, in the most important moments, like I'm not crapping on him. I'm not saying he's terrible. I'm not the guy that's like Bobo's the worst guy in the history of the world. But like there were so many times where you would find a play the Monken drew up that was like the perfect play at the perfect time, called the right way, set up the right way, and you would call it out and be like, "Oh my God, look at this play that Monken, he fooled everybody." Da da da. There's not really a whole lot of those with Bobo involved, but I understand his offense to score points, and then in that particular game, there were winners. There were winners called. The execution wasn't great, and you can't put that on Bobo. But at some point, you have to kind of look at Bobo and be like, maybe you're just unlucky. Maybe it's not that you're not good. Maybe you're just unlucky because Like in the previous regime, when you were here the first time, is that Georgia would score a lot of points, but they wouldn't beat the teams that they were supposed to beat or beat the 50. They weren't winning the 50-50 games. And now that you're back, we're not winning the 50-50 games. And you may be scheming up the right play. Maybe you're just unlucky. I don't know. But, you can't schematically, you can't put that on Bobo. And the one thing that I said at the back end of last week's show was, if we lost, I could take it if we empty the tank. Right? I said what I wouldn't be able to take is another loss where we do stuff completely out of the norm and we play super conservative offense. And you're 100% right, Harrison. And that's why I say you cannot put this one on Bobo. And I said all that to say that I have never been Bobo's biggest fan. I'm not his biggest supporter, so I'm not going to come on here and just support the guy blindly. I'm not that one. That's not me. I will criticize him, but you can't put this one on Bobo. He took shots. He gave us the ability to win the football game. He allowed us to do it.
It was one of the most aggressive game plans I've seen him call.
We didn't run the ball for shit. You can almost make an argument that we should have ran the ball more. But in fairness,
situationally,
right, we didn't have time to run the ball. We were running out of time. So, and then you could even take that a step further and say maybe you were a little bit too aggressive with 30 seconds left to go in the game and a timeout on the board, right? So,
yeah.
The one thing you cannot do is blame Bobo for not being aggressive enough, because you're 100% right, Harrison. You nailed it. You told me all week long that you thought he would be aggressive. He was aggressive, even in the first half. This game came down to execution. I believe it was emotion in the first half, execution when it mattered. There were plenty of opportunities to point to moments where better execution had a better result, not a better play call.
Yeah.
And, I know you've watched a lot of film back. I've watched a lot of other people breaking down film. Like I said, I'm almost almost just super fatigued of this game at this point, because every single talking head has had some type of film or a take on this. I know the one that you love so much is Josh Pate. I've never watched his show, to be completely honest. But Joel Klatt, I watched some of his stuff here recently, and some, the people that we always watch. But it was there. It was there. It's not maybe if you want to blame somebody, blame Kirby for not having them ready to play. I don't know. And that's the one that Kirby said, right? Didn't you go to his presser?
I did. Yeah. Well, I went to the one on Tuesday, but it was post game Saturday that he said he took the mantle on defense. And Dan, I got to take the mantle real quick. As much as we are talking about what we said we wanted and they did, your boy was flat out wrong. Flat out wrong. Last Monday, Dan, I laid out my envisioned game plan for what I wanted defensively.
You
may not be done with offense. And I know that's how this show goes. We go on tangents, guys. It happens. So we will circle back, I'm sure. I said I wanted Georgia to go 4 down, go with your 5 down. You bring your pressures. I believe I said empty the clip in regard to how you play up front. Georgia did that in the first half, and it got them killed. Got them killed. It wasn't until the second half when they started to make adjustments, which, ironically, not really ironically, was exactly the thing I said I didn't want to see, which was the 3-2-5 double spy look that we saw over and over and over again in the SEC title game. That's what helped bring Georgia back. Georgia played it really well on Saturday in the second half, and they slowed down Jalen Milroe and that Alabama offense. So yeah, I'm gonna eat the crow on this one. I was wrong. I thought the way to beat him was to pressure him constantly, have guys in his face, have guys in his vision. And, if that deep shot wasn't there, he wasn't going to be able to, see the field that well and wasn't going to be able to get to his checkdowns. But Jalen Milroe, and I'm going to give him his credit here too, Dan. Jalen Milroe played the game of his life. I'm talking Jalen Milroe had the Heisman Trophy on lock after that first quarter. Really, the first half. He was 18 of 21, 199 yards, 1 touchdown. The only blemish was the interception that was tipped into the air and into Dan Jackson's hand, but he also rushed for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Milroe had about as impressive of a performance from a quarterback facing a Georgia defense as I had ever seen. The only one that really matches it or rivals it was Joe Burrow in 2019. And when I go back and watch the 2 games, you look at the stat sheet, Jalen Milroe played incredible versus Georgia. Incredible. So credit to him there. He showed massive improvement from the first time he played him to the second time. You could see in the first half, defensively, Georgia's game plan was we were going to pressure him, we were going to take away the deep ball, and we're going to make him either have to hit the check down or get out of the pocket and run all over us. Well, he did the first. He did the latter. He did the I'm going to find my checkdowns. He hit Georgia underneath so damn much that they had to abandon their pressures. They got really aggressive up front and kind of sacrificed in the back end, and that's kind of what got him killed. Kirby Smart said as much. But once they came out in the second half, started playing with their spies, started keeping them in the pocket, they found more success. So, hey, I know we do the, hey, guys, we called it. I'm going to do the, hey, guys, I was wrong on that one. What were your thoughts on it? Because I think, actually, yeah, touching the defense first. And I have another hot topic-esque question for you on the Georgia game.
Luke's mom just would like to let you know Roll Tide. So she just chimed in on our video Roll Tide. So that's always fun. No, look, that was the first game in the Kirby Smart era where no, it's not. That's not true. It's the second time. And the first time was the SEC championship game when they had probably 2 of the best wide receivers SEC's seen in a really long time, and Jameis Williams and Devontae Smith. And they were absolutely
John Mechie.
Was it Menchie?
It was no, not crap.
It was
Mechie and Jamo. Devontae Smith was a few years earlier.
Okay, well, anyway, they carved us up. They were absolutely just blitzing us. And but the one thing that we take for granted, and we've talked about this a million times, and every other show in the world has talked about this a million times, is that Kirby's really damn good at designing defenses, and then so is Glenn Schumann. I think maybe in this, it's impossible to quantify. I wonder how much not having Muschamp in the room on Saturday mattered this particular Saturday, because when you have 3 defensive minds that are that smart, eventually, like you said, they came up with a solution, right? Of how do we slow this down? How do we stop it? How do we control it to where we can get back into this football game? And they were able to figure it out between all the smart people in the room. I wonder, just wondering out loud, if Muschamp was in the building, if him collaborating, if the answer would have came a little bit quicker. There's no way to know. There's no way to quantify it. That was the first time that I actually popped in my head like, damn, I wonder what would happen if Muschamp was here. So, and I'm not doubting Schumann or Kirby because they're brilliant. It was just something that popped in my head. I hadn't verbalized it to this point. I think I may have mentioned it to you, but I'm not sure if I did or not. In one of our phone calls, but I don't know. Did it ever cross your mind that he wasn't there? Because it just kind of popped in my head, and it wasn't like I wasn't dwelling on it. It was just one of those things where it just kind of popped in my head where I was like, dang, Muschamp's not in the building. I wonder if he would have made a difference.
Well, when you say
it's
building,
almost not fair, right?
When you say building, I take it you're talking about in the stadium on the field.
Right, yeah. Because he's always been there with Kirby.
I guess here's my thing, the way I think about it. And they've asked this question to Kirby in the press conferences, like I think it was a few weeks ago. They said, hey, what is the impact not having Muschamp, or what's the difference in his role? And Kirby made it seem like it was a non-question. Like, hey, he's here Monday through Friday. To me, that's where the game plan goes down, is Monday through Friday. So to me, I don't know. Everybody says, and I think you even told me this, everybody says halftime adjustments is bullshit. It doesn't happen. There's no big, hey, everybody's in the room, we're going to do these adjustments. It's all, at least from what people say, it's, the coordinators, the good coordinators are thinking about it. and use that first half as kind of like their setup for, hey, here's how they're playing this. Here's how I'm going to respond. Here's how they're doing this. Here's how I respond. And I guess typically it just happens where the adjustments come in the second half because you get the chance to see everything. So I don't know. No, it didn't cross my mind that much. I don't know. I mean, I don't think they would have played the first half any differently, even if he was there, because I think after the way the SEC championship unfolded and the way that staff adapted to Georgia's game plan and found success later in the second half, I think that was the way Georgia was always going to play this game in the first half. Was they're going to come after him, and they were going to make him beat them with his arm. So to me, Dan, it's kind of like the Bryce Young deal, where Georgia played him one way in the SEC championship and then came back in the national title game and played him a completely different way. Now, what gets interesting about this, and I know we're going on down a different path now, is how does Georgia play Milroe if they see him a third time? Do you come out with that second half plan and see how Alabama adjusts to it? Because if Alabama, that's the thing about a potential rematch. Alabama knows how Georgia's going to play them now. Alabama knows they're going to probably play, for the most part, 3-2-5 with the 2 linebacker spy look. And Alabama, in a potential rematch situation, is going to have time to game plan their response to that, which makes it interesting. Because what is Georgia's counter to whatever that game plan is for Alabama?
No, that's way
a
too
whole
much
different
speculation, because
that is way different. It's down a different path. That was just something that I went on tangent. But yeah, I don't.
Well, it's way too much because we didn't have Tate Ratledge, who might be one of our or probably is our best offensive line, one of our smartest offensive linemen. We didn't. I mean, Michael Williams played, but I don't know how healthy he was. He didn't look very explosive to me. And you don't know what Alabama's health is going to be at that point. So, what if they might have one of their star wide receivers? Brian Williams might go down with a hangnail.
It's way too far down the line.
It's too much, and there's too much football.
Right,
and then you also got a lot of young players for Georgia that are growing up on the I don't care. It doesn't matter. But here's the other thing. We've also been going now 38 minutes into this show, and we've been telling you about all the bad stuff that Georgia did. But let me tell you some of the good stuff that Georgia did. First of all, Lawson Lucky is a hell of a football player, and he's getting better every single time out there. Everybody was kind of hanging their hand on Oscar Delp, and this is not a throw tomatoes at Oscar Delp session. This is just that Lawson Lucky has turned into a hell of a football player. He's making a lot of really nice plays. He's blocking really, really well. And then, these wide receivers are getting a little bit more comfortable. Dominic Lovett looked explosive. Was he perfect the whole day? No, he wasn't. Was Colby Young perfect the whole day? No, he wasn't. But I think we were, was it 4 for 4 or 7 for 7 on fourth downs? I can't remember what the number was.
5
okay,
of 5.
Whatever. I was close.
No, you were.
It felt like 13 for 13 is what it felt like. It just felt like we were on fourth down every damn play.
Which makes it the fourth down success, it's so weird when you talk about the third down, because they're terrible on third down.
Well, and we were terrible on 2-point conversions, which is basically like your best. I don't know. But Colby Young did a great job of getting his body in front between him and the ball, and basically shielding the defense and making some nice plays. I don't know. Like the offensive line, that's the one thing that my son did mention is he was like, oh my gosh, he's like, look how much time he has to throw. And in the second half, I'm sure there were a couple plays where that wasn't the case, but for the most part, it felt like, and at least it looked like, Arson Beck had all day to throw the damn football. And I don't know. The defense played incredible. That's where I'm struggling. That's why I'm stumbling here, is because I really don't have adequate words for what that defense did, for what they weren't able to accomplish in the first 26 or 27 minutes of the football game, to what they were able to finish the rest of the football game. Is pretty remarkable. Only to get beat on just a absolute circus play where you have two guys and Humphreys and Bolden, and Bolden obviously coming over to help. And I'm sure Bolden would love to take a different angle and he stopped running at one point. It was just a shit show of a play. I mean, Ryan Williams makes a circus catch. Did you know he's 17?
All right.
I didn't know.
Yeah, he should be in high school, Dan.
Yeah.
Do you know he can't vote?
Can't drink either. I don't know.
Yeah, it's Dan. You had a point here, or you were talking about it, and we will wrap up this Bama segment, and we'll go straight into, I guess, Auburn. There's really not much to talk about with Auburn. I didn't prepare much for Auburn because this is what kind of sucks about the Wednesday show. We had all week. We had a schedule change, so we had to delay. Monday is still our show day. Today was just a one-time thing, as far as I know.
County for that.
And yeah, it happens. We thank the Hurricane for that one. Yeah, we just schedules conflict. We had that. On Tuesdays, I don't get back till about 7:30, so it was gonna be a tight squeeze to get that one in. But Dan, I guess here's the question, and this is the question going forward for the rest of the season. What are you putting your stock into from Saturday's game? Are you putting stock into the first half struggles or the second half turnaround? Because it's like, okay, we have like you said at the top of the show, it was a tale of two halves. What half, like, what sits with you the most? Is it the struggles? Are you concerned more so than you are optimistic because of the turn? Like, what is it? If you get my question,
the most repeatable thing that I saw would be that second half defense. I think that if you were going to hang your hat on anything, if you were going to cash in your chips and bet them all on something, it would be that second half defense is real. That is the most real thing we saw. I don't believe that defense that was getting run out of the building 28-0 is real. I don't believe that offense that was going balls to the wall, throwing the ball over the place. I don't think that's real. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that's not Georgia's DNA. I would love to be wrong. That'd be. I would shit myself if that really happened. If all of a sudden Mike Bobo turned into an air raid offense guy, I don't see it happening. I think the most real thing we saw was Georgia being able to adjust and being able to get 3 and outs on a quality offense, right? And notice I'm taking Alabama out of that. It doesn't matter who. I'm just saying I think that Georgia being able to control a really high-powered offense with their defense is probably the most realistic thing we saw.
Yeah, I think I'll ride with you there. I think they played their hardest matchup of the season in terms of offenses. I mean, you're not going to have to worry about an elite athlete getting the edge on you like Jalen Milroe for the rest of the season.
NCAA 25 Isaiah Bond, you might be in trouble.
Well, I'm talking about from the quarterback position.
Nobody
quarterback wise, there's not going to be a more, I guess, matchup nightmare than there is Jalen Milroe. Which
Jackson Dart.
But Dart's not the same athlete as Jalen Milroe. They played Dart last year, so they dealt with him.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe didn't do that to us last year either. So
neither, yeah, but still, you get my point. Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, not the same athlete at all, not even close. That's kind of my point though. Is like down the stretch, Georgia. Not saying Georgia doesn't have to play good quarterbacks because they have to play at least 3 of them for the rest of the way. There's just not as much of a matchup nightmare as there is with Jalen Milroe, what he presented Saturday. So I'll ride with you there. Now on the offense, yeah, Georgia's not going to throw the ball 50 times the rest of the way. They did that because they were down 28-0, and you had to bring them all the way back. But I think there are elements of this offensive performance that can be replicated. Obviously, the deep shots, being aggressive out of the gate. The best way to stop the slow starts is to hit explosives out of the gate. Now, can Georgia do that out of the gate? We hope so. We think so. We saw in the second half they could hit their explosives. They can have explosives, but they have to do it they have to be sustainable in how they do it. I guess that's my big question down the stretch. I do feel a little bit better about the offense going forward in that the playmakers are not a weakness. They can create those explosives. It looks like Georgia does have the athletes to get over the top of the defense. I think that is good to see because I think the first 3 weeks of the season, our big thing that we talked about was there is no Lad McConkey, there is no Brock Powers. Who's Georgia's go-to? I think we saw Georgia has a go-to guy potentially in Dylan Bell. Really impressed with Dylan Bell. I don't think he dropped I don't think he had a actual maybe drop. I know there was a few incompletions to his side, but I don't know if you consider those a drop. Dominic Lovett, I love to see Lovett get more involved. Colby Young, I think that's going to be the guy down the stretch that we see develop more and more into that go-to option. And then Arian Smith, he's been the focus from the very beginning. They're trying to get Arian Smith the ball more. That worked, and it didn't. And then, hey, everybody has those moments. Heck, Ladd got killed after the Kent State game in 2022 because he dropped a couple punts. So it happens, all right? But yeah, I'm with Dan here. I think the defensive performance, that's more sustainable than throwing for 439 yards on 50 attempts. Dan, Auburn this weekend. Weird to say it's a homecoming game with Auburn in town. I don't have very much thoughts on this because this is kind of, it's following the Alabama game. So we were always going to stick on that. So if you were looking for an Auburn preview, I'm sorry. Just know they've turned the ball over a lot and they get a lot of yards. So that's about the extent of the preview.
I think the real question in this game is going to be which quarterback is going to play and how badly is Hugh Freeze going to throw him under the bus. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Like, Hugh Freeze has become such a despicable human being. He's not long for Auburn. There are certain things that you can pontificate on, and there are certain things that you can stamp. That son of a gun is not going to keep his job in Auburn. As soon as Auburn's got a little bit of money. They're still paying somebody who are they paying not to coach? Narson, is that his name?
Harsin. Yeah, Harsin. They're paying Harsin.
You're paying Harsin.
Paying Gus a little bit.
Damn it, boy! They might be paying 3 coaches not to coach here in a minute. But listen, he's got to go, and I think it's been said by a lot of different people, and Bo Wallace went absolutely ham on him about how he didn't give a crap about him as a person. Shot him up with stuff to play in the game, and then didn't care about the fallout after that, and then was quick to throw him under the bus when stuff didn't go right, and then it's going over and over and over again. So it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. What a piece of work. I'm not 100% sure why they hired him back. You got what you asked for. You feel bad for the kids that decided to go to Auburn, but that was kind of a foolish choice in the first place. I knew everything I needed to know about Auburn, and everybody wants to know why I have such a hair up my ass about Auburn. Is you have to understand this is the same school that called me on National Signing Day and was like, oh yeah, that spot that we promised you, we don't have it anymore. So good luck, go find some other place to play. And if it wasn't for friends and connections that I had, I wouldn't have had a place to play. So that's where I was supposed to go to school. And then on the last day, they told me you are not going to school here. So that's exactly how that went. So yeah, I hope Georgia beats the hell out of them. And I'm pretty sure they will. They're a 24-point favorite, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's like, what's the response from Georgia in this game? Typically,
it's a good question. It's a fair question, Harrison.
Yeah, I mean that's really what I'm looking for the rest of the way. Is what's Georgia's response to this loss? Kirby Smart said in his post game speech, your response tells me everything I need to know. So we're about to find out. Dan, I'm done with score predictions. I think we have.
Yeah, we're not doing that shit anymore.
we haven't hit. We'll just go ahead and take Georgia money line. That seems like the safest bet here. Yeah, Georgia money line, 24 points. That's a lot considering they had trouble with Auburn last year. But come off a loss, I think it's going to be. I'm tired of saying it. Just prove me damn right. Like, I'm tired of saying I think we're going to see a different Georgia team. I think we're going to see them respond. Like, prove me right. All right. I want to see it before I start maybe even believing it now. Because this isn't the same team that we saw 2 years ago or even a year ago.
To your point, Harrison, this is supposed to be a get-right game.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a get-right game. So freaking make it a get-right game. Make sure your head's in the right place. Come out and play.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go, boys.
All right. That's going to be a wrap for episode 127 of the Top to Top podcast. That was Dan Kiley. I'm Harrison Reno. Follow us on Twitter at Harrison Reno, at Dan Kiley 3. For some reason, I always want to say 03, but it's just 3.
It's just 3.
And I've been saying it for 2 years now. Make sure to like, subscribe for more Dan rants. We didn't get one today, but we're going to have some more in the future. Subscribe and like for the pod. Rate us 5 stars. We may even read the review out. I promise you we look at those sometimes. Most times when we have them come in. Anyways, Dan, we'll see you next Monday at 7:30.
Hey, go Braves. Let's go. Let's get a freaking win, boys. And go Dogs.